BoogeyMan band coming round the bend. Is BoogeyMan band? Is BoogeyMan band?
Greetings, my fellow Fright Fiends. Thanks so much for stopping by the Horror Zone channel. I hope everyone's doing well. Today's video is a very special video. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a couple of weeks now to get it prepped for the actual anniversary date of this movie, but I've just been really too busy at work. But I finally found the time. I wanted to take my time with this one just because this movie impacted me greatly as a kid, and I wouldn't see it until a year after it was in theaters. I would watch it on home box office HBO, summer of 1986, August, right before I started middle school. So I was 12 years old the first time I saw Tom Holland's Fright Night. The Fright Night really was a game changer for me, much like my favorite movie of all time, Salem's Lot, was. Salem's Lot was the first vampire movie I was really ever exposed to. I did see, Bela Lugosi's Count Dracula on like Creature Features and things like that, but Salem's Lot, that changed my life. That was the movie that really first ever scared me beyond belief. And at the point that I was exposed to Fright Night, I was already a huge fan of Salem's Lot, and the miniseries had been re-aired the year prior in 1985 on TV 44, and I recorded it, so I watched that all the time. I did see, this is something, just another vampire movie that I did see prior to Fright Night, was Once Bitten. I don't know if people remember this film. It came out in 1985. It was one of the first PG-13 movies, and I did see it in the movie theater with my good friend Tori, who was 13 at the time. I was 11, and it was kind of, it was like a sex comedy, and that movie deals with this century-old vampire played by Lauren Hutton, who is looking for a virgin. That's the only way she can retain her youthfulness, and she fixates on the Jim Carrey character. And I remember Tori and I going to the movies to see this, and I remember somebody in the row in front of us turning to look at us and going, "How old are you kids?" I still remember that, and I was 11 years old. We must have really looked young, but Tori was 13, and that's how we got into the theater. And that's not, you can't really take that as a vampire movie. That's more of it's a comedy with vampires in it. But when I saw Fright Night, I was drawn to that movie because of Stephen Jeffries, who of course plays Evil Ed, which remains my favorite character from the film. And again, I was way too young to see some of these movies, but there was a movie called Fraternity Vacation that Stephen Jeffries was in, and it had aired that same year on cable television in 1986, and we had cable television, and I would watch movies late at night times, and I would see some of these movies like Porky's and things like that. And again, I was 11 years old and probably shouldn't have been watching. I'm 11 going on 12, but I remember watching Fraternity Vacation, and of course there's a lot of really known actors and actresses in that. You have Kathleen Kinmont, who people will know from like Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. You have Barbara Crampton, who everybody knows from Reanimator and From Beyond, and then you have Tim Robbins, it was one of his first movies, and then Stephen Jeffries played Wendell Tibet, and Amanda Bearse is even in it, who plays Amy in Fright Night. And of course, she was Marcy in Married with Children. But I remember watching that, and I thought Stephen Jeffries was funny. And then there was a movie that my grandmother, my late mama, who passed away this year, that I miss terribly. She mentioned a movie called Heaven Help Us. And that was a movie starring Andrew McCarthy, Kevin Dillon. It had a lot of great actors in it, and Stephen Jeffries was in that as well. Patrick Dempsey's in it. John Hurt is in it. And I remember watching that movie, and again, Stephen Jeffries made me laugh. And then I remember seeing a preview that summer for Fright Night that was going to be on cable television. It was going to be on in August, and I remember seeing a little tease for it, a trailer, whatever you want to call it, on the network, and I recognized Stephen Jeffries, and it was the scene where Peter Vincent burns him with the cross, and he screams, And that was an image that I said, I know that guy. That's the guy from Fraternity Vacation. So that's what made me want to watch the movie in the first place. Plus, it was a monster movie. It was about vampires, and again, I loved Salem's Lot. So, and I still remember watching it in August when it aired on HBO. So the plot of Fright Night deals with a teenager named Charlie Brewster, who's played by William Ragsdale, that discovers that his next-door neighbor, Jerry Dandridge, played by Chris Sarandon, is a vampire. When no one believes him, Charlie decides to get Peter Vincent, played by the late, great Roddy McDowall, a TV show host who acted in films as a vampire hunter, to stop Jerry's killing spree. And like I said, you have Chris Sarandon, who played Jerry Dandridge, William Ragsdale played Charlie Brewster, Amanda Burse is Amy Peterson, Roddy McDowall is Peter Vincent, Stephen Jeffries plays Evil Ed, Jonathan Stark played Billy Cole, Dorothy Fielding played Judy Brewster, and Art Evans played Detective Lennox. Movie was written and directed by Tom Holland. And unbeknownst to me at the time, was Tom Holland was responsible for one of my favorite movies. Even at that age, he had written Psycho 2. And I loved that movie, and I have praised that movie on this channel multiple times. But this was his directorial debut. But I also think not only is he a brilliant director, but he is just an amazing writer. And all of the characters in Fright Night are very relatable. They all have complexities, even Jerry Dandridge does. All of them are very just well-written characters and played by amazing actors. I was drawn to William Ragsdale's portrayal of Charlie Brewster right away. As soon as the movie started, I just really liked him. I felt sorry for him throughout the course of the movie because no one believes him. It's like The Boy Who Cried Wolf, and just all the things that are happening to him with, Jerry coming after him because he's trying to expose who he is. And I thought Dorothy Fielding and the relationship between Charlie and his mother was very much like my mother and I. I mean, I was, very young when I saw this movie for the first time, again, being 12 years old, but I could relate to the single mother, the only child. That was my life growing up, and I just really related to that relationship, even though Mrs. Brewster's a little goofy and my mom's not like that at all. There was just a sweetness to that relationship between Charlie and his mother. I also loved Amanda Burse. Again, my first exposure to Amanda Burse as an actress was Fraternity Vacation, and I thought her dynamic with Stephen Jeffries in that film, again, I was very young when I saw it, but I really liked them together. And again, Stephen Jeffries was my main draw to watch the film. I will always praise that guy. I wish his career would have been different. I think he could have done some amazing things. He's an amazing actor. Again, you can look at Evil Ed as just sort of the sidekick, the comic relief, but there's a lot of complexities to that character and the way that Stephen Jeffries portrayed him. He's a very sympathetic character, especially as you move towards the second act and he does, become a vampire. He is, lured by Jerry Dandridge, and you see that he is very vulnerable. It's not all just shtick for him. He's this tragic figure that's hiding behind his eccentricities, the way that he sort of mocks Charlie for believing that Jerry's a vampire, and just how he's always being goofy and laughing and things like that. That's his armor. That's the way he protects himself. And there's that scene where he finally gives in to Jerry Dandridge, I think, is one of the most powerful scenes in the film. And then just what befalls that character throughout the course of the film is heartbreaking. Roddy McDowall, I was never really a big fan of the Planet of the Apes films. I didn't get into those. I didn't know who Roddy McDowall was when I saw this film for the first time. And of course, the film, if I remember correctly, the film was written for Vincent Price, and he wasn't really interested in doing these kinds of movies anymore, just because that had sort of been his career for so long, and he was aging and was kind of moving away from horror films. But Roddy McDowall brings this human quality to Peter Vincent, this man who's kind of at the end of his career. He's a horror movie host. He's done a lot of B movies, and he's about to get evicted from his home, and he has this kid come up to him and tell him that his neighbor really is a vampire and he needs him to help him kill him. And just the reaction, I still love his reaction to Charlie Brewster telling him this as he's leaving the studio. It's just, again, the way that Tom Holland paints his characters, and you can see it in Psycho 2, you can see it in Child's Play. He's a brilliant writer. Cloak and Dagger is another great movie that Tom Holland wrote. I identify with every one of them. And then, of course, Jerry Dandridge, played by the amazing Chris Sarandon. And this, again, was my first exposure to Chris Sarandon. I had never seen him in anything before, and it might make people laugh. When I first saw him, I thought he was Tony Danza when I watched the movie for the first time, because I was familiar with Who's the Boss and Taxi and things like that. And there was something about him that kind of looked like, again, I was a kid, I was 12. Yeah, Chris Sarandon is amazing as Jerry Dandridge. There's these moments where he is absolutely terrifying, and then there's these moments where he's haunted, and you can see it, and he doesn't have to say anything in order for you to sort of be just sort of wrapped up in the presence that he brings to this role, the sadness, as well as, he has to protect himself because, he is this centuries-old vampire, and the longing for his love that looks like Amy, the Amanda Burst character, it's very heartbreaking. And there's some great moments in this where characters say a lot without saying anything. And that's something I just think is absolutely beautiful in the acting. And I wasn't prepared for that watching this film as a kid. I just thought it was going to be a crazy, wild vampire movie, but that's not what it was at all. Also, I just can't say enough great things about Jonathan Stark, who plays Billy Cole. I think he brings a lot of humor, but he also has that menace to him, as well as Jerry Dandridge's guardian. The late Art Evans, who played Lieutenant Lennox, who's investigating Charlie's claims that a woman was killed in Jerry Dandridge's house. That was the moment where Charlie realized that Jerry was a vampire, which I think is one of the most haunting moments in the film, when the first exposure that's what's going on. I mean, at first, Charlie thinks he's just seeing a woman nude, but then he sees that Jerry is going to bite her, and then realizes what's going on. And the moment that Jerry sees him watching him still gives me chills. And it comes down to the acting between Ragsdale and Sarandon. Absolutely brilliant scene in the film. But yeah, this movie impacted me greatly, and it was a favorite of mine. I remember recording it and watching it many times. I even showed it to my late grandmother. She really liked the film. She liked Charlie more than Evil Ed, though. I remember that, and I wanted her to like Evil Ed because I loved the Evil Ed character. But I still remember her watching it, and my mom being kind of like, "Don't show your grandmother this gory stuff," because the makeup effects work in this film is absolutely brilliant. The transformation when Jerry attacks Charlie in his room, and he stabs him in the hand with the pencil, and you see what he really looks like. That reveal that this suave, handsome man, Mrs. Brewster invited him over, and you see as he pulls the pencil out of his hand what he really looks like. And I just thought it was just absolutely amazing. The way that Chris Sarandon, who was a very handsome man and still is today, could look like that. He didn't look human. I mean, the visual effects, the makeup effects, and the visual effects by Richard Edlund and Steve Johnson are bar none. They're absolutely incredible. These transformations and the scenes like where the shadow turns into the bat, and the bat is flying towards Peter and Charlie. I mean, just that scene, the transformation of Evil Ed back into a human form after he is turned into the wolf and after he's been stabbed by Peter Vincent, the effects of changing Amy into a vampire, the Amanda Burst, the makeup effects they did on her is absolutely insane, incredible. Obviously, the movie impacted me in a great way. The other thing I have to say before I get into the next thing I want to talk about is Brad Feidel's amazing score. Also, you have the soundtrack, which is Jay Giles' band, the Fright Night song. I mean, there's so many great artists on the soundtrack, but that score is so great, and just that come to me, that piece of the score is still just, it gives you goosebumps when you hear it. I could just listen to that score as I'm working or whatever. I mean, it is just timeless and absolutely brilliant. The next thing I wanted to get into talking about this film and its impact on me was in the late 80s. I found out about it when I was in 8th grade, that there was going to be a comic book series, and I've talked about it many times. But Now Comics, which is now defunct, it doesn't exist anymore. It filed for bankruptcy in 1990. But they did a Fright Night comic for 2 years, and I have every issue. I was actually lucky enough to have one signed by one of the cast members. This was the ad that I remember seeing in another comic for Fright Night coming out. And I believe my friend Mike Dodson is the one that told me that there was going to be a Fright Night comic when we were in 8th grade. And I waited for it all summer. It came out in August of 1988. I have every issue. The first 2 issues retold the story of the original film, and then it was all new stories about Charlie and Peter and other characters that were introduced, fighting the undead, as well as brain bats and aliens, and there was a coven of witches. Evil Ed came back, even Jerry Dandridge came back. It was a great comic book series, and I was heartbroken when it was canceled in 1990. They did put out a new Fright Night comic in recent years. It started in 2021. I didn't get the first issue until January of 2022, and they only did 5 issues. They did a one-shot with Evil Ed that came out last year. I did talk about every one of those issues on this channel, but this was the one that came out I believe this came out last July. It was part 5. It took a long time for all of these books to come out. They would come out like maybe 1 or 2 a year for a few years, and it was really hard to keep up with the story. And but I was so grateful that the last couple of issues of the series were really good, and really it felt more like Fright Night than how the series had started. I still think the Now Comics run was more successful in terms of retaining what I loved about the movie, but I was still grateful that this book series had come out, and I hope we get more, because this does leave off on a cliffhanger. But yeah, I loved the comic book series. It was, again, a way to sort of be exposed to these characters again and see other adventures with them. Yeah, that comic book series is gold to me, and it will remain. That original Now Comics comic book series is my favorite comic book series of all time. The amazing artwork by artists like Neil Vokes and Lennon Del Sol, just absolutely fantastic, and really, like I said, retained the essence of what made those characters so special in that original Fright Night film. And the last thing I really want to talk about is just the fact that I had the honor of meeting 4 of the actors from the film. That is over the course of from 2021 until last year, when I met Chris Sarandon at GalaxyCon. And yeah, it was very special meeting all these people. I was able to meet Stephen Jeffries. He was the first actor from the film I was able to meet. I met him when I was really at a really dark time in my life. This was in August 15th of 2021 at Sinister Creature Con, and I talked to him for a very long time. I even got him to sign issue number 8 of the Now Comics series, The Revenge of Evil Ed, and I got that book right before I turned 15. And I remember I was so excited that that character had come back. Of course, at the end of the movie that the character is still alive, but you never see him, you just hear him in Jerry Dandridge's house when Charlie looks out the window and sees the glowing eyes. But you never see that character again after his tragic fate. So it's like, I was so excited that the character was still alive. And getting that issue, I just remember going, if I ever get to meet Stephen Jeffries, I'm going to have him sign this. And 32 years later, that became a reality. I was able to have him sign that book, and I remember I knew so many people had asked him to say, "You're so cool, Brewster," but he said he would write whatever I wanted to on the book, and that's what he ended up putting. So I said, that would be great if you could do that. And I remember he was so surprised that I knew so much about his work. And again, I didn't go into, his stuff that, the adult stuff that he had done, because I was respectful, but I did talk about like the Amazing Stories episode he did, the fact that he was in the Twilight Zone television series, The Elevator, which was written by Ray Bradbury. Loved him in 976 Evil. just talking about Fraternity Vacation and things like that I saw when I was probably too young to see it. And he was just, I remember he was just floored that I knew so much about his career, and couldn't have been a nicer guy. And it was just such an amazing moment. It really just sort of piqued my spirits when I really needed that lift. And meeting William Ragsdale and Amanda Burst the following summer at Sinister Creature Con, it was great. They were side by side. William Ragsdale was great. I remember telling him that I liked Mannequin 2 more than the original movie, and he said the first step is admitting it, which always made me laugh. And then I started getting a little tongue-tied talking to William Ragsdale, which I didn't have the problem with Stephen Jeffries, but talking to William and just saying, how much I loved everything he had done, Herman's Head, things like that, the fact that, just what an honor it must have been being with Roddy McDowall and all that stuff. And he was a really, really nice person. He loved the shirt I was wearing, which I had, it was a shirt that I had gotten from Fright Rags in 2015 that had, it was for the 30th anniversary of Fright Night. I got this shirt from Fright Rags, and it had him and Roddy McDowall, or the Peter Vincent character, as well as Chris Sarandon on it, and Jerry Dandridge. And he was really nice. And then going to talk to Amanda Burst, I remember telling her that she was the reason I watched Married with Children, because I knew who she was, and she went like this. I still remember her doing that, and that it made her heart happy is what I'm assuming that meant. And then last year meeting Chris Sarandon, and I gave him a gift. I gave him an issue of the Fright Night comic books. I just, I didn't have enough money at the time to get an autograph, so I just settled for getting a picture from him. With the other 3 actors, I got autographs from all of them, but went up to him and he liked my shirt, because I had my Jerry Dandridge Fright Night shirt, one of the first Fright Night shirts I ever owned, that I got all the way back in 2011. I was wearing that shirt, and he really noticed it right away, and I just thanked him. For everything he did to make this role. And of course he did the voice of Jack Skellington. Just a fan of the actor in general and everything I've seen him in, and he couldn't have been nicer. And it was such an honor to be able to stand next to him and talk to him for a little bit, and he was nice to accept the gift I gave him. But yeah, these 4 actors really mean a lot to me, just like the people that were in Salem's Lot. I mean, unfortunately I didn't get to meet a lot of them, with the exception of Ron Scribner, and through my friend Danny, I kind of, I have a little bit of I got a personalized picture from Julie Cobb because Danny interviewed her. But I got to meet these people that I looked up to for so long. 40 years later, they still mean so much to me, and those experiences will stay with me for the rest of my life. And I think I just want to end this by saying thank you. Thank you to everybody that made Fright Night, everybody. I hope that one day I get to meet Jonathan Stark, who played Billy Cole. I would love to meet him. I would love to meet Dorothy Fielding, who played Mrs. Brewster. I miss Roddy McDowall terribly. He was so great. I love the Peter Vincent character so much, because there's so much humanity to him. And he's such a character that at first he's taking advantage of these kids, but then he rises to the occasion when he needs to, and becomes the bigger person, and stands up for himself, and isn't the coward that we realize that he is at one point in the film. The moment where he breaks down to Charlie and tells him, that's not even my real name, Peter Vincent. I'm terrified. He goes, and that moment between Charlie and Peter is, I think, again, it just shows not only that the right people played these parts, but that Tom Holland was a brilliant writer and a brilliant director, because that scene is so impactful, just like there are so many impactful scenes in this film. And I love Tom Holland for all of his contributions to cinema. I love Psycho 2. I love the Child's Play. The original Child's Play film will always be my favorite, because he had so much impact on that. And as you can see, as much as I love the other Chucky films to a certain degree, that first one is the best written one, in my opinion, because of him. And this movie, Fright Night, a movie that will live on and will always have the impact to me, just like Salem's Lot impacted me. It is my second favorite vampire film of all time, and this is a year before, I saw it a year before Lost Boys would come out, which would also impact me greatly. But Fright Night is a gift. It's a gift that I have enjoyed for 4 decades. Well, just under 4 decades, because I wouldn't see it till a year after it was in theaters. But it's a very important film to me. I love it. I love everybody involved with it, everybody that helped make it. It's a beautiful, well-crafted, amazing film that has a great cast, well-written dialogue, amazing visual effects, lots of humor, lots of emotional moments, and lots of scares. I couldn't be happier being exposed to this film when I was. I'm so grateful for the 80s, the decade that I was coming into my own as a man. You know, I was a child when the 80s started, and I was 15 when it ended, and it remains my favorite decade of my life. I loved that time of my life, discovering these storytellers like John Carpenter, like Tom Holland, like Wes Craven. They all impacted me. So happy 40th anniversary to Fright Night, to everybody that made it. Thank you for making such a amazing vampire film that I will love for the rest of my life, and I've loved for the last 39 years. And if you are a fan of Fright Night, please let me know how this film impacted you, if you grew up in the 80s like I did and were exposed to it at a very young age like I was. Leave me some thoughts down in the comment section below. We'd love to hear from everybody. And thanks so much for watching this. Thanks so much for supporting the Horror Zone channel, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Take it easy. Stay scared as always.